just wondering, yesterday, were any more human remains found?
There were more remains found yesterday. I can confirm that today. And we continue to dig. We're not going to be digging here in the weekend. We're going to keep the site secure. Monday, there's going to be a post-mortem on the remains that have been located so far, and then we'll be back here Tuesday to continue with the dig, and we anticipate being here for several more days after that.
So can you just, sorry, this is kind of newsworthy. This is, so 2 days in a row then, you've struck at something that appears to be human remains?
Correct.
Just tell us, were these different sites or the same site?
It's essentially in the same area.
What can you tell us about how you found these remains?
Again, I can't get too specific about exactly where they were and how they were found, but as you saw yesterday, the officers are down there. They're digging through the area by hand, so it's a very slow process. It's a very meticulous process, and we found those initial remains on Wednesday, and then in the same general area, found more remains yesterday. And I just spoke with the anthropologist just now, who confirms that they were remains. And like I said, we continue digging in the same general area, but we've got a long ways to go yet.
Having a victim who has not been identified yet, but also having more human remains, generally speaking, will this really sort of help as far as forensics and the speed of this investigation?
Well, it depends on how successful we are at identifying what we've recovered. Best case scenario is those remains that we've recovered are matched up to remains that we've already recovered, and if there's any new remains, they get identified rather quickly. If that happens, it's going to be part and parcel of the case that's already before the courts. It shouldn't hamper us at all. But of course, if it's a new victim that we didn't know about, who again we have trouble identifying, much like the gentleman in the picture that we had to release, it took us a long time to get him identified. That's going to take some time. So hopefully it doesn't come to that, and we'll have some answers sooner than later.
I know you're looking at a compost pile. How deep are excavators going?
We don't know yet. They dig, and then they send the dogs through, and if the dogs continue to show signs of decomposition, they'll dig again. And they'll keep digging until those dogs aren't reacting anymore.
So is it possible you found remains on 2 different days, day 1, day 2? Is it possible they are from the same victim?
I wouldn't even hazard a guess at this point in time yet. We don't know.
You just have to try and identify those remains with DNA, fingerprints, dental records,
Correct.
Whatever the pathologist decides.
Keep in mind, and as I've said before, the victims that we recovered previously were all dismembered. So it's a job for the pathologists and the anthropologists to match these remains up. So it'd be way too early for me to say anything about whether they belong to the same victim or not.
Now, for yourself, what were you doing today? Were you simply getting notes or talking to your team? Anything interesting?
Talking with the team, getting updated from the anthropologist, and speaking, we had the deputy chief here who wanted to see the amount of work that was going on, and so I was here with him and briefing him.
Is the team the same size as it was yesterday, or did you bring in anybody new?
We've lost our Durham guys until next week. We still have, yesterday we had about 20 guys down there digging. Today we have about a dozen, and I don't know what the numbers will be like next week. It really depends on availability and staffing issues.
Can you say anything about the type of tests you'll be able to run on some of the remains that have been discovered, in terms of like dental, DNA,
Well, the 3 general tests would be fingerprints first, if the decomposition isn't too bad, and then dental if we've recovered skulls and teeth, and failing that, DNA. And the DNA is what can take some time. So hopefully we can get some answers before DNA testing has to take place. We just don't know yet.
You brought the deputy chief here this morning. What was that about?
The deputy wanted to see what kind of work was going on. It's hard to get an appreciation for a crime scene unless you see it up close, and he just wanted to see that and pass on his thanks to the officers who are working very, very hard in some very tough conditions here.
Are you surprised that you found these remains again on day 2? I mean, you said you were quite surprised to find them so early on at one of the first digging sites. What was your reaction when you learned that they had found even more?
Not as much of a surprise. Obviously, once we stumbled upon the first remains, it wasn't a surprise that we would find more.
How long do you think this could go? I know last week or yesterday you said another week. And you're taking the weekend off, you said.
We're not going to be digging on the weekend. Like I said, it really depends on the dogs and the indications that we get. We could be here for 2 or 3 weeks yet. We could be done at the end of next week. We just don't know yet.
The weather's better today. How long will your team be here today?
They'll be here quite a while today. The weather's cooperating. We had the storms coming through yesterday, which shut us down early. So we'll be here all day today.
And how pleased are you with this new discovery and the work that's being accomplished? I mean, we had to wait for the weather to get better. The weather is better, and now this.
Yeah, it's hard to describe it as being happy or pleased when you're finding things like we're finding here. It's a terrible case for the families out there and the victims. And so, like I said, it's hard to be happy or pleased, but we're making progress, and hopefully there's some closure and an eventual end to this investigation.
How many families of missing people are you in touch with who may be waiting to find out if their missing loved ones could be matched to the DNA that you're finding in this ravine?
Well, I won't get into specific numbers, but we do have outstanding missing persons cases, and I don't want to get anybody's hopes up. We've laid 8 charges, and we may, at the end of the day, only have 8 victims. We just don't know yet, so I'm not going to comment specifically on who we've been in touch with and who we haven't been in touch with.
Are you seeing any kind of pattern down there in terms of how the remains were placed or anything that comes to the planters? Like, are you looking at strategy or pattern or anything?
I think that's a question that will be better answered in court. I can't discuss that right now.
Yesterday you described this area in the ravine, which is just off to the, to the side of the property at 53 Mallory as a compost pile. Can you just explain how you believe that McArthur was allegedly dumping his debris over the side of the hill, or was he taking it down the hill, based on how how it looked?
I can only hazard a guess at possibly both of those scenarios.
But there wasn't a trail down there before you physically went and cut down those trees, right? I mean, the path we took yesterday, was it there, or did you manufacture that path?
No, that path was there before. That's a public park just to the right of the premise, and that's an access path that's been there. And that's a path that we're using to access the area where the trees came down, is in the area that we're digging, and down to the command tent that we have at the bottom of the ravine. But
given how steep it is, it might have been quite difficult for someone to make their way down there with, debris and dirt and possibly human remains, correct?
It may have been.
So you can't speculate, but he might have dumped, or he might have walked it down, is what you think?
He may have, yes. All right.
What about today? So just give us an idea of what else is happening. Anything different than what we've seen?
No, we're just carrying on, and we're digging. You'll see the dogs coming and going. Like I said, as we get further down, they pause. The dogs go and take another sniff around, and then they continue digging.
How are the people doing who are actually doing this physical work? Have you spoken to them? How are they faring?
Yeah, and it's hard work. It's tiring. Thankfully, today is not as hot as it was yesterday, so it's a bit of an easier day to be working. But it's very tiring work. So it's a tremendous strain on the officers, and I'm thankful that they're down there getting it done. So they want to get the job done. We want to get the job done. So we will get it done.
In the past, when we talked about the planters, these were dismembered human remains. Can you say that these are dismembered remains, or are they just decomposing remains, or can you give us an idea? Are they similar to the remains you found in the planters, or more decomposed?
I'll be able to answer that question after Monday, after the postmortem. Okay? Thank you, guys.